Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Grem the Lazy Gremlin, and this is Tales from the Past. Today I have yet another story for you. A story about a man, an outcast, whose journey into greatness begins with tragedy and loss. Ismael, the wide-eyed brute. A hulking mass of muscle, Ismael commands a presence unlike any other. A presence of intimidation and violent tendencies, or so it would seem. Ismael from a young age was actually a kind, gentle-hearted boy, impeded by his brutish, giant-like visage and lack of intellect, which in turn made him awkward in social situations. He might have been considered an abomination in his village if it weren't for the protection of his beautiful and well-loved younger sister. The two siblings were tight-knit, sharing a strong bond and watching over one another through thick and thin. In fact, his family was all he had, his purpose in life, and as long as they were safe and happy, he would be as well. His days consisted of brutal hard labor and passive mockery from the villagers. He, however, did not mind such petty little things as long as the insults did not extend to his family, and the work suited him just fine. Throughout the years, the hard physical exertion had molded him into a mountain of a man, muscle cloaking his entire giant-like frame, making him a creature better fit for a circus of wonders than an ordinary village in the middle of nowhere. Because of his visage, he was always the outsider, the freak, and even his parents never stepped in to truly defend him. They did not hate him, but rather wanted to steal their giant of a son for his future, whatever that might be. This left him secluded from others, but even so, he knew he was never truly alone, for his sister was always there to protect him, even when he did not need such kindness. Kindness. This was the word Ismael associated the most with his one and only true friend, and it always rang hand in hand with her name, Ariel. Unbeknownst to most, with the exception of his sister, Ismael possessed something truly pure and innocent, despite the hatred he had to endure all his life. A sense of childlike awe and wonder that extended to everything and everyone around him. What most people would perceive as nothing more than boring everyday conveniences and events, Ismael would see more through the surface and into the core of it. Perhaps it would be easier to describe such a gift as a sort of cosmic sense of wonder, to see the whole of it, instead of what is right in front of you. The two siblings would spend hours on grass-covered hilltops, gazing at the stars in the dead of night, conversing about all manner of things. Most of the time, Ariel would just sit there and listen, as Ismael would describe the world as he sees it, and she would marvel at the wonders her brother could perceive with his unique perspective. Other times they would play and mess around during daily routines like children. No matter what happened, they would always be there for one another, and for Ismael, this was all he needed. For him, she was the world, the only thing that ever mattered. Love of the purest kind. Those were the good days, and thankfully they were abundant. But as we all know, destiny is a fickle little thing, and sometimes it has greater plans for the most unlikely of creatures. On one faithful day, Ismael was out gathering timber for the village when he heard yelling, screaming, like a cacophony echoing through the woods. It took him a moment to realize where it was coming from, and as he did, he knew. Worry blanketed his features as he hastily stumbled back home, only to find fire. Red, hot flames roaring, grasping at the skies, corpses littering the muddy streets of his once quiet home. From the distance, he could hear more panicked screams, like animals, desperate and afraid, dying. There was only one thing racing through his mind now: Ariel. As if chased by the devil himself, Ismael stumbled with reckless abandon through the ravaged streets, searching for the one and only thing that mattered. The death he witnessed left him reeling and sick to his stomach, but there was something else there as well. Something dark and disturbed, scratching at the edges of his consciousness. He ignored his own discomfort and pushed on, frantically screaming his sister's name, hoping to see her behind every corner and turn, until he heard it. Laughing, revelry, and beneath it all, a familiar voice. Turning the corner, he saw it. Savages, men dressed in mismatched leathers, filthy, smiling and laughing as they proceeded to violate the pitiful whimpering lump beneath them. As he lay witness to the grotesque scene unfolding before his eyes, his heart sank and something snapped deep within. A rage unlike any other sprung forth, his eyes fading into nothingness as the darkest part of him emerged with a boom. A cry. A war cry. The bandits did not even have time to react to the hulking mass charging at them. The first victim fell painlessly to the ground like a rag doll, his lifeless eyes staring back at his band of fellow criminals as Ismael fell on them like a storm. The man on top of his sister, most likely the leader of the group, perked up from his sadistic revelry with a fright. As he did, Ismael grabbed him by the throat, hoisting him up in the air and letting him hang there for but a moment. Before anyone could stop him, he slammed the filthy creature into the ground head first. Once, twice, thrice, over and over again, until there was nothing left but blood and a broken carcass in his hands. Fear was beginning to spread through the ranks. There was no more laughter, just the heavy, enraged breathing of the giant who had just brutally murdered their leader, and the almost silent stammers of the underlings who knew their end was nigh. The first one gathered his mettle and threw himself at Ismael in a desperate attempt, only to be grabbed by the rest and yanked up into the air. What followed next drained the color from the rest of the bandits. Placing his free hand at the man's neck, Ismael began to pull at his arm. The man let out a few unintelligible screams as his arm popped out of its socket and extended outwards, stretching the skin like rubber. He pulled and pulled until the flesh began to tear and the screams intensified, and soon he felt the arm rip loose. The man, the monster, dead and disarmed, was let go, and he fell to the ground with an audible thump. Only 3 remained, their faces slack with shock. They did not know what to do. Suddenly one of them snapped, and out of nowhere, in a last-ditch effort, began to sprint towards Ismael, screaming in fear, with his weapon raised. The man clearly did not know what to do after his initial charge and ended up catching a fist like a hammer in the face. He fell quickly, broken and dead. As he did, another managed to slash Ismael across the back with his blade, but for no effect. This is when the bandit realized he should have ran instead, and as he did, the giant of a man turned and looked down at him. Not even a spark of life in those eyes, the bandit thought, as Ismael placed his hand on the bandit's head and began to squeeze. Screams, blood, and then a crack. Only one pathetic animal left. This one had not moved during the whole spectacle, just whimpering and sobbing where he stood. A young man, no more than 17 years old. Ismael did not care, and he smiled as the boy fell to his knees before him. He kicked the boy over on his back and moved on top of him, pummeling him in the face with his fists with ever-growing intensity. The world disappeared, and only blood remained. Red, warm, and slick. It satisfied him, and as the boy stopped squirming, a sense of disappointment fell on him. It was over. There were no more monsters to kill, no more blood to be had. Then, as quickly as it had happened, he snapped out of it, and the world, reality, came back into view. It was quiet, and for a moment he just sat there, gazing at his handiwork, until he refocused and heard the low, ragged breathing. His eyes slowly fell on the source of the sound, a broken, unmoving mess on the ground. Ariel. The pain he felt as he fell to his knees in front of her pitiful form was immeasurable, the weight choking at him. With shaking hands, he could not even bring himself to touch her in fear of breaking whatever was left. He sat there, shaking for what felt like an eternity, until a labored whisper broke the silence. "It's all right, brother." He could not believe she was still with him. If only it would remain so, for as he focused on her, he noticed an ever-expanding red patch covering her abdomen. Panic began to take over, his breathing quickening to a frantic rhythm of inhales and exhales like an off-beat drum. Suddenly, a hand cupped his rough cheek, and he heard that calming, kind voice that had always brought him peace. "It's all right, brother. There's nothing more you can do. I'm so tired." Even on her deathbed, she was still trying to protect him, to care for him. Ismael did not know what to say. He did not have the words. And so, he did the only thing he could. Wrapping his arms around her, he gently lifted her off the ground and embraced her. A solemn goodbye. As he heard the final breath leave her, he wiped his tears and carried her home. The house was still burning, ash raining down and coating the ground black like tar. In front of the porch, he could see 2 burnt-up bodies. He knew even before he approached them. His parents, they were gone as well. The rage, he could feel the hate and rage intensify once again, but this time it was kept in check by his overwhelming sadness, the loss of everything he had. In that very moment, he knew what to do. He would lay his beloved family to rest, in a place untouched by these depraved animals. But first, he would seek vengeance. Grabbing a rusty old lumbering axe, Ismael let the madness take over once more and marched into the village proper. This night, this time, it would be the monsters and animals who would scream in fear as another butchered them and their fellows in cold blood with gleeful laughter. And so it was, a night of terror and monsters, blood and death. As dawn broke, he buried his family on that familiar grass-covered hilltop and said his final goodbyes. He was alone now, broken and lost. The only thought that brought him any manner of peace in this madness was his sister. He hoped she was in a better place, still watching over him. With a rasp, he whispered, I'm sorry I couldn't save you." Staring at the rising sun, he vowed to not let this be the end of him. He would move on, for that is what she would have wanted. Gathering what little of his belongings were left, he set out, leaving his former home behind. "This will not be the end," he reassured himself as he marched into the sunrise. If only he knew how right he was, for destiny was not yet done with him. One day soon, the simple giant of a man would go on to do magnificent things, to be a hero to some and a villain to others. So it shall be, for as the saying goes, where one story ends, another begins.